Hey everybody, Assalamu alaikum. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button and the notify button so you know when you're getting new episodes. And we just want to grow this project. I thank you in advance. Without further ado, let's get it rolling. The Shout Out Show. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. To my shout out family, my shout out soldiers, I'm Preacher Mars, host of the SOS, the Shout Out Show. Please let me welcome you to our show today. Order of business, if this is your first time coming, we ask that you click the like button, you click the subscribe button. We're trying to grow this project. I've been saying this since day one, and I appreciate all of you that have done and helped along that way. That's number one. And we hope that you'll also, enjoy yourself. Now, to my regular shout out family, my regular shout out soldiers, I appreciate you. And I want to say something about yesterday's show. Sometimes truth wraps around your emotions. And while I said some things that may be construed as harsh, they were truthful. They were coming from an honest place and an honest emotion. Sometimes you can't separate the two. It is what needs to be said at the particular time. And the language, I know I said, called somebody a sissy and things like that and a punk. But it was on my heart. And that's between me and my maker, and we'll work that out later. Today's topic is remembering 9/11. And this is a topic that is sensitive. Let me give a shout out. Big brother Z coming in all the way from Toledo, man. Glad to have you on the show. And my sister Rabina, you like my research department, Sister Rabina. And Ree, you like craft services. I got you for dinner today. Don't worry about that. Talk about 9/11 is interesting because, of course, everyone remembers 9/11. People raised children after 9/11 who weren't there that lived in a post 9/11 world. We used to worry about post 9/11 world. We presently worry about post COVID, but 9/11 was a very interesting thing. Everybody has the 9/11 story. I'm going to tell you mine because I believe it gives me a little bit of pretense to talk about what I'm going to talk about. My feelings, my thoughts, my forecasts. Let me give a shout out. Thank you for making it LA. Appreciate you. Thank you so much. Miss Eleanor has been trying to, brothers and sisters, get my numbers up on YouTube so I can hit 100 subscribers. God bless her heart and all the people that are helping her. Or no, helping me. How about that? LaRon. Okay, we got LaRon. Thank you so much, brother LaRon. 9/11, most of you guys have a 9/11 story. It's almost like, where were you when Kennedy got shot or King got shot? Interesting thing for me on 9/11, I was traveling, believe it or not. I was coming from Washington, D.C., flying from Washington, D.C. to fly to L.A. I lived in Long Beach at the time. Of course, this is, 9/11. Now, the interesting thing is 9/10, my mother and I drove back from Atlanta. I had a college conference down there, college showcase. I did the showcase. We drove back from Atlanta, straight back, the whole 10 hours. We got home, and my mother was exhausted, brothers and sisters. And I'm saying this because things have time and place. My mother was exhausted. I had a flight out the next morning. Here's the deal. The flight that I had to take out that next morning was leaving from Dulles Airport, American Airlines Flight 77. Now, why am I saying this? Well, my mother was in bad shape. She didn't feel well. And the drive from our house to Dulles and back was just a hike. I didn't want to take, so I took a cab. But what I did was, I didn't want to have to go all the way to Dulles myself. To make it easier on myself, I called and I was able to get a flight directly from D.C. Well, it connected in St. Louis, D.C. to St. Louis to L.A. Why am I telling you that? Why am I sharing this? What's going on, brother Omar? Welcome to the show, man. Welcome to the show. And well, we got somebody else. How you doing, Kevin? I'm telling you, brothers and sisters, this because I didn't take the flight out of Dulles, American Airlines 77. I took a flight Delta. And Delta connected through St. Louis and then St. Louis to LA. When we got to the connection in St. Louis, we were waiting. It was on the tarmac. The lady came on. She basically said, everybody get your stuff, get off the plane right now. It didn't sound right. Get off the plane. We don't know where you're going. I'm like, what kind of customer service is this? And walking out of the plane in the bar, there were people surrounding the television. And we were watching planes flying to these big buildings. Now, to put it in context, I'm like, I've seen this before. This is Arnold Schwarzenegger in True Lies. What's the big deal? I've seen it before. It's a movie. It turned out not to be a movie. It was 9/11 happening. What's the significance of American flight that I was supposed to take out of Dulles? That flight actually was the flight that was hijacked and it was flown into the Pentagon. Allah is merciful. Unfortunately, my mother did not know that I had taken another flight. She didn't. Poor mom. And I probably put 100 gray hairs in her head because she didn't know. I was like, you're not feeling well. I'm going to fly. And nothing worked. Nothing worked. Phone lines were crazy. You couldn't get through. Eventually, later, I got a hold of my mom and we talked and it was okay. But it began this unraveling. And I say this unraveling because I sat there with another comedian. His name is John Witherspoon. God bless his soul. He's in St. Louis for a show. He was like, preacher, these people are gone crazy. He said a couple other things I won't say on the air. But what he said was, he said, preacher, your people are in trouble. I said, what you mean, black people? He said, no, Muslim people. He said, y'all are in trouble. And what happened that night was I watched the world change like a lot of people. One thing was the emotional outpouring. The idea that we have been attacked. So all the African-American, Latino, Native American, everybody been excluded from the American dream. All of a sudden you were ushered in. And it was weird because I'm being ushered in on the height, if you will, the pinnacle of the pain of a nation. Somebody somewhere, I won't get into conspiracy theories, but somebody somewhere figured out a way to make sure everybody in America felt like minorities felt in America. They made them feel that you weren't safe. And that spot hadn't happened ever in the United States. Whatever organization was responsible, Al-Qaeda, whoever you want to put it on, they made sure that America, up to this point, would never feel safe again. And the hysteria was so crazy and so large that people were literally talking to one another. Are you okay? And as I watched it, my heart swelled, but then the cynicism came. The cynicism that I learned from the civil rights movement. The cynicism of when people go, okay, I'm tired of being a victim. Someone else is going to have to be a victim. And therein lies the rub. If you go back, and I do this, I'm a journalist. I've been trained. I'm a trained journalist. You guys don't really realize that. I'm a trained journalist. I'm going to give a shout out. What's going on, Tyrone? You know what's interesting is there were a series of phone calls that were made in and around the time of 9/11. The day it happened, site visits, all of this. Now, a lot of you thinking it was George W. Bush. It was not. The hot name on the scene at the time was no other than yours truly, Donald Trump, who in many regards offered some really logical, heartfelt ideas about what the city was going through. But at the same time, he would say things like, I was really sad that they shut down the stock market. It's 9/11, they kind of had to do it. But that aside, one of the greatest robberies happened after 9/11. And when I say one of the greatest robberies, I don't mean a physical robbery. It was the idea that it was plausible plausible that people in the United States, Muslims in the United States, African Americans in the United States, could somehow, through this experience, lose their basic rights. And that's what happened. It was an assault on the Fourth Amendment. A lot of people are going, preach, what are you talking about? One of the things that happened during 9/11, and I want everybody to listen very clearly, there was a crisis, a huge crisis around the time of 9/11. That crisis was this, that the American incarceration system was in crisis because they didn't have enough bodies to fill up the prisons and the private prisons. The private prison business was in shambles. The market was in shambles. Let me say it again. The prison lockup system was in shambles. They didn't have enough bodies to put in the jail. So, and I don't know if you guys ever gone to prison towns where you'll go to a town and their main GDP is incarceration. Making sure these people, mom work at the prison, dad works at the prison, son work at the prison, she works at the bakery at the prison. I mean, it was a weird culture. And I remember something that was said to me that will manifest in my art. An elder, a scholar, a leader, a friend, a teacher explained to me in no uncertain terms that as an African American Muslim, I now have fiduciary responsibility to protect and shield my immigrant brothers and sisters. Now, I didn't understand that. I said, physically? He said, no, philosophically. I said, philosophically? He said, philosophically. I said, I don't understand. He said, the people who did this are not Black. However, the relationship to the religion of Islam will allow people to attack our brothers that don't look like us. And we cannot stand by and do it. In fact, he basically put all of us on order that we were going to have to stand on post for our immigrant brothers and sisters. What I didn't know, and what the genius of this whole thing was, it was a rehearsal. It was a rehearsal. I say it was rehearsal because I found that I was going to have to stand on post for my African American brothers and sisters who weren't Muslim, my Latinos who weren't Muslim, the indigenous who weren't Muslim, because there was something going on here that was a little bit more than people like to talk about. Case in point, 2 words, Patriot Act. Let me say it again, Patriot Act. I'm not talking about Hassan Minhaj's show on Netflix. I'm talking about the Patriot Act that got rammed through our halls of politicians in mass hysteria that something had to be done. And what happened, brothers and sisters, is this emotional capital, this collective of wellness around a tragedy was co-opted, molded, and framed to be able to do exactly what we're dealing with now, which is to attack people, to reframe the narrative on who's a victim. Reframing narrative on who's a victim. And I'm saying this now because it's a huge problem right now in America under this administration. They're working under the playbook of the Patriot Act. William Barr is working under the Patriot Act playbook. Let me say it again. Donald Trump is working under the playbook of the Patriot Act. You see, George Bush took the Patriot Act and he expanded it. He knew that our hearts were injured. And you could talk to somebody when their hearts are injured, when they're scared. And it's two things. My mentor, Reginald Kitchen, pray for him that he gets better. He says, in any crisis, you got 2 options. Number 1, you could get bitter. And number 2, you could get better. You know, minority cultures have excelled at the idea that we have to get better. In lieu of the surroundings or the politics around us, we have to get better. And this Patriot Act, brothers and sisters, if you read it, if you had time in your life to read it, it basically said we are going to employ preemptive strategies, quote unquote, to deal with terrorism, to deal with espionage. And here's the one you got to remember, and other things. And other things. Do you hear what I'm saying? And other things. You see, the Patriot Act basically took away habeas corpus. That's why you still have a Guantanamo Bay. You still have men who are down in Guantanamo Bay, men and women, let me correct that, and children who are now adults, who are down in Guantanamo Bay who never had a trial. They never had representation, legal representation, because they were international. That's why you still have a Guantanamo Bay. Now let me, yes, there you go. There you go. We might as well get it out, people. I'm going to shout it out. Omar, yes, good old Patriot Act scam. Yeah. Sister Chaudhry, yeah, rushed in, UK, there you go. I'm going to put it all out here. Created to instill fear in people. And I'm going to get to this because this is extremely important. And people still down in Guantanamo Bay being tortured. We haven't used the word in a long time. Remember waterboard? People being waterboarded? See, that's what happens when people take your emotions from traumatic experiences or traumatic situations and twist them for their own good. They ran through this whole thing of the Patriot Act. And what the Patriot Act did, brothers and sisters, and I'm tying this to what I talked about, the prison system. What the Patriot Act did was introduce this idea of preemptive behavior. Preemptive behavior. Almost like stand your ground. I felt threatened, therefore I reacted. Does that sound familiar? Well, George Bush said, we're going to prevent, if we think, and they literally ran through a whole lot of people. They say, hey, listen, if we think that you're harboring terrorists, you're going to get it. The terrorists are going to get it, but you're going to get it too. If we think, not if we have proof, not if we have intel, if we think that you have it, we're coming after you too. Yeah, I know. I never met him before. Musam Beg. I know. I never met him before, but he was one of the people. He was one of the people. So let me frame this piece out too. The prison system was in arrears. That was the big deal. You can't find it in the newspaper, but everybody knows that the population of prisons were at a critical low. In the Patriot Act, this whole idea of preemptive behavior lied this issue of sneak and peek. Sneak and peek. Let me tell you about sneak and peek. Sneak and peek was basically the government's way of saying, we don't have to get a warrant to search your premises, to search your property, to go through your records, to go through your life. We don't need a warrant. We're going to usurp that basic protection in the name of protecting America. Forget about protecting you, protecting America. And this sneak and peek rule, it wasn't confined to the CIA or the FBI. The sneak and peek rule, brothers and sisters, was allowable even at local policing levels. Local policing levels. Let me give you a scenario. I won't say a name, but this happened to one of my friends. One of my friends was suspected of being a dope dealer. This isn't terrorism, okay? He was suspected of being a dope dealer. He was not a dope dealer. He had money, but he didn't get it through illegal means. He's just a smart guy. Somebody said he dealt dope. The police department, listen to me, went to his house while he was not there, entered his house, searched his house up and down, searched his house, didn't find what they were wanting, closed the door, and walked away. He called and said, "Preach, somebody's been in my house." And it turned out to be the police. Because in the Patriot Act, it says not only can they do that, but they don't have a fiduciary responsibility to tell you that they did it, or they can tell you within a reasonable amount of time. So now let me tell you something else. I have another problem with that. My problem is this. I have another friend. He's in his house. He leaves. He's not a dope dealer. He's doing other things. But he leaves. The police enter his house, search it without his knowing, leave. All of a sudden, they come back with a warrant because they say, "We believe it has dope in it." And I'm like, wait a minute. If you believe it has dope in it, that means that you probably put the dope in his house. Let me give Sister Macy a holler, shout out. Hey, Sister Macy, thank you. Welcome to the Shout Out Show. We appreciate you. But I got to break down this 9/11 thing now. The talk about 9/11 is real talk. Because some of y'all don't realize that some of those things, the wiretaps and all that stuff, they've been renewed. If it wasn't for COVID, some of these same things that I'm talking about will be allowable right now. As I'm speaking, voting is in peril. In Florida right now, they just passed, the appeals court turned down, the appeals court basically said that felons, people who are felons, cannot register to vote in this election unless they paid their fees and their fines associated with incarceration, which now means you got to pay money to go vote. This basically is after a long fight to be able to register to vote for, and they're talking hundreds of thousands of ex-felons. This type of behavior is the same thing as, brothers and sisters, the beginning of the Patriot Act. People go, "Preach, what are you talking about?" You have a manifestation right now. You got a manifestation right now. All of you people on the show are very, very smart people. I'm going to give a shout out to my mom. Calculated mass hysteria. Mom, I'm going to get to that. Because you know what? It's calculated, but it's not mass hysteria. It's mass amnesia. That's right, Brother Omar. It affects the minorities. Here's the thing that I need everybody to know. It's been a building of laws and circumstances and laws and circumstances. When you turn on television right now and you see a black man being murdered, with the exception of George Floyd, it's not happening in real time. These are catalog killings on tape. There's a guy in Arizona, Muhammad Jr., I might have it twisted, and they show him being choked out and killed on videotape. But here's the deal, it's from 2017. Ahmaud Arbery is from months ago. George Floyd was real time. We saw it because somebody had a camera shooting it. And what you saw, brothers and sisters, is the arrogance, is the pompousness, is the blatant disregard for life that was shouldered and bought in and ushered by the Patriot Act. Let me tell you again. The hysteria of the Patriot Act. Thank you, Muhammad Jr. Thank you, brother. Omar just trying to help me out. I appreciate you. You know, my memory's going, brother. Pray for me. The hysteria of the Patriot Act is that it used hysteria against us. Meaning that once you go down that road and people establish a blueprint for your emotions and how you think, they lock you into that blueprint. I've always had a problem with the word Islamophobia. In my master, we had never heard the word Islamophobia. We know that people didn't like Muslims, but it wasn't this condition like arachnophobia or something like that. Islamophobia. And the idea was, it was almost like the N-word for the Muslim community, that we're going to put it on you. But here's the magic. We're going to make sure that you use it in your group. You never hear these Islamophobes going, "I support Islamophobia." They don't say that. It's Muslims trying to fight Islamophobia. And what happened was, it gets into the psyche. it gets into the psyche, whereby when we go to stand up and show out and put ourselves out there in the space of, listen, this is not right, we're compromised. We're asked to explain and apologize for the behaviors of Muslims that we don't know, of Muslims that have different ideas. I'm not talking about religious ideas, but definitely different political ideologies, which is okay. But when it comes to the point that you harm human life, that's why I jump off the boat. That's what many of us jump off the boat. And that same thing, brothers and sisters, allowed us to go to war. We got a new person here on, hey, what's going on, girl? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Wagwan, you know what I'm doing. It's good to see you. Big shout out to your family. I hope everything's going well. You stay out of trouble, you owe me a phone call. All right. This same weird analysis, paralysis by analysis of the Muslim community, and in many regards, the sublimation of my other minority communities, allow for this space for the United States to revisit a war, the original Iraq War, Desert Storm, where we went to the Middle East, went to the Gulf area, and basically we reneged on a deal with Saddam Hussein, between him and Kuwait. We reneged on a deal. Now this right here should tell you folks what the problem is. I said the United States, Kuwait, Iraq, Afghanistan have nothing to do with American Muslim life. In particular, has nothing to do with African American Muslim life. So here's the deal. There you go, Sister Rabin. I love Sister Rabin right here. It was not a war, it was an invasion. They tried to make it a war. If you're over here, Sister Rabin, they tried to make it a war. They talked about the invasion. Yeah, there you go. But here's the thing that I don't want you to miss out on. We always talk about the side things, you know, the little ancillary stuff, ancillary type of ideas. What happened, brothers and sisters, when you do your work? There's a book called Taliban. Now, I want you to be really, really clear about what I'm about to say. I grew up in Washington, D.C., lived in Maryland with my mom. That's not the point. My masjid where I took my Shahada, brothers and sisters. Masjid Muhammad on New Jersey Avenue is known as the nation's masjid. It's right down the street from the Capitol. I was in town one day for Juma. Went to Juma, and I'm like, okay, cool. I'm getting to see my folks. We go through our normal Juma, good khutbah. I'm thinking I'm going to get downstairs, get a couple fish sandwiches. The imam at the time said, I want everybody to hold off, everybody, before you leave. We have some guests here. We have some guests that want to say hello. The guests were from Afghanistan. And he didn't speak any English. And the guy who did his translation, his English wasn't that great either. But they talked to us, and it made me feel like the way Christopher Columbus talked to the Indians when he showed up. Like he discovered us. Now, here's the deal. At that point in time, according to this book, and I'm putting things together, that man was in town basically to talk to the United States to have the Taliban recognized as the official government of Afghanistan. Bam! There you go. So you start putting all these things together. What I'm pointing out is there's a collective of things that have nothing to do with American citizens, but has to do with American policy. There's a collective of things that have to do with deals on the table that don't have to do with the welfare of the American people. The last deal was, what was it? The Patriot Act. This whole idea of preempting. Now this is American extremism on steroids. We can do whatever we want to. We can go wherever we want to. You can't stop us. we now have moral ground to do whatever the hell we want to do, which includes taking us to war. Let me give you the numbers for what was lost outside of human life in New York City. It's about 18,000 businesses went out of business because of that. SBA covered a lot of them. We also had, just the structural damage. Real estate market took a hit. I'm going to round it up to say maybe 70, $80 billion in damage. Okay? You know how much 2 wars cost? $6 trillion. And we're still over there right now. All right, let me see, sister. All right, watch Official Secrets. Understand the collab. I will check it out. There you go. Boy, Omar, you're the first one. It's your first time on the show, boy. But you're chiming in. I appreciate you. Yeah. The pipelines, that was a whole nother story. That was Unical, Conoco, and the land rents. They were dealing with clans in Afghanistan. And they were trying to get pipeline built. And they were competing against, of course, Russia and sub-Asian interests. And they couldn't get it done. So the pipeline that went to the Caspian Sea will provide oil to all of Asia. So you have all these things going. But something went wrong. And to this day, I don't know, but I'm still trying to say, how did some guys with box cutters and barely legal pilot's license pull off something so precise? I told you guys I was supposed to be on American Airlines flight number 77 from Dulles Airport. Alhamdulillah, my mom was not feeling well, and I didn't want her to drive me out to Dulles and have to drive back. I live in fear of my mom getting sick while she's driving, so I wind up taking this other flight. But my point is, where are we now? Is the idea of 9/11 that we've in some regards sequestered our own intelligence, sequestered our own emotional ability, and the wantonness to go out and investigate things and ask the tough questions? Because right now we sit around, brothers and sisters, and we're looking and we're not asking the right questions. Yesterday's frustration was the fact that we know the answers, but we're afraid to take action. We know the answers, but we still listen to somebody sit and lie to us. Years after 9/11, things began to come out. That U.S. intelligence had information about a pending attack, but they didn't think it would happen, so they brushed it off. The man that was doing interviews during 9/11, Mr. Donald Trump, he actually called into a TV station. What you calling into a TV station for? Now you're down at the grounds of 9/11, trying to talk about we got to rebuild and da 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 da. I'm like, all right, I ain't gonna be mad. I respect your game. I respect your hustle. But now that man is president, and I want everybody to realize that the year before, 2000, he actually talked about running for president. And here we are 20 years later, dealing with nothing that's really sophisticated. We're dealing with the exact same thing. Except this time, we're being taken into different wars. Wars with China. Wars with the World Health Association. Wars with Black Lives Matter, even though I have my issues with Black Lives Matter. Wars against the ability to protect ourselves. Financial wars. Drug wars. Right now, brothers and sisters, and I could be totally off on this, there are provisions. There are provisions in a rereading of the Patriot Act that could be misconstrued to keep this man in office. Let me say it again. there are aspects and concepts within the Patriot Act that can let this maniac claim a certain type of privilege and situation to stay in office. One of which is COVID. COVID is a crisis that they don't have a law for. COVID is a crisis that they don't have a vaccine for. They don't have a playbook. And the reason they don't have a playbook is because they realized the last time they didn't have a playbook, they got away with murder. That was 9/11. Everybody remembers here how I'm gonna shout it out, sister. Thank you. There you go. Signs were there. Sister Macy, you know you can come on the show anytime. But here's the deal. There are things in that situation and scenario from the Patriot Act that can allow the wrong type of mentality to exert control over our executive branches, our judicial branches, and of course our House and Senate branches. That can usurp control. You've seen little things like taking money away from the Defense Department to build a wall. Have you seen that wall lately? Hell, I could jump over that wall. Ain't no real wall. You stole the money. Just like PPE. You stole the money. Just like, oh, your businesses. Yeah, I'm going to tell y'all something. That PPE thing was a joke. That PPE thing was a joke. People, I got to shout. This is my big brother right here in comedy. Stevie Brown, man, I love you, man. And I tell you, I owe you a call. I always keep you in my prayers and your family in my prayers. Your dad's still kicking, man. Please give them all a shout, man. Stevie Brown, funny man. So just like Sister Rabina is saying, there are things in that Patriot Act that will allow him to extend the presidency. And the way he will extend the presidency, wait for it, is that he will destroy the presidency. You see, you don't have to worry about being president when you're a dictator. Right? You don't have to worry about those things. If you're not the president, you don't have to worry about it. I will destroy the presidency. And everything that's going on right now, and the guy you really got to watch is William Barr. That's potentially the most dangerous man in the United States. Because through his meddling, they have figured out a way to jam laws up whereby they're not effective. Not that they're not relevant, they're not effective. Meaning that they will take a law and they will run you through a process of courts, appeals, and all that type of stuff. And by the time you get to the end of the rainbow, like you said, you know, if a house is on fire, you don't want to have a debate about water. You want to put the fire out. These guys want to have debates about water, and if you get the water, they want to appeal before you get the water. And I'm like, yo, that's crazy. So watch yourself, brothers and sisters. You got it, Steve. Got a lot of there you go, Steve, man. Yeah, there you go. We got a smart house here today. Now listen, let me give you guys a get down because I've really run over my time. I hope you guys let me apologize to you. Everybody, Omar, Sister Macy, I normally I only do like 30 minutes. I'm over today. So let me apologize for that. Let me give you guys a get down. I always say this is how this is the Hustler's playbook. They are setting up right now this whole thing about voting. Okay? They're setting up right now for us to be so involved with the outcome of the vote that we won't look at the spirit and realignment of the laws that protect our voting, but more importantly, protect elections, that protect election results. Forget about voting. I'm talking about election results. Forget about voting. I'm talking about procedural understanding. You know, government agencies are being used right now. And it's all okay. You know why? because it's under the Patriot Act. You can create crisis, brothers and sisters, and say we have a precedent. And that was the whole thing. Nobody read the Patriot Act. They just signed in a state of hysteria. And so 9/11, a little under 3,000 people lost their lives. May Allah be pleased with them. May Allah give them guidance. May Allah give them the highest levels of paradise. Accept their good deeds, forgive their bad deeds. But we say that for those who are departed. I'm talking about us who are still here. And that's the conversation we need to start having. 9/11, 2011, 2020. What is the condition of us who are here? And not this mamby jamba. I'm not emotional about this stuff, brothers and sisters. We need to be talking about it right here, right now, because November is right around the corner. But I bet you, just the same as 9/11, the planning has been in place for this thing to happen, just like the planning was in place before 9/11 ever happened. And I'm not talking about the terrorists by themselves. I'm talking about agencies, information, field intelligence that came up with a narrative that said we can switch the whole narrative about life in America this way, that way. And because we're upstanding American citizens, if you will, we don't want to be castigated as un-American. And that's another word that I've been hearing out of this White House, telling you who's American and un-American. Well, that's McCarthyism, brothers and sisters. It's McCarthyism. So strap up, because you know exactly where this thing is going. Now listen, I'm Preacher Moss. I hope everybody has a great weekend. Before we go, please tune in tomorrow. We have guests, and then we have super guests. We have Sister Maisha Mustafa. She's a writer, a journalist, an advocate, an activist, an editor, a pioneering editor of the Muslim Journal. Brothers and sisters, you don't want to miss this one. Rarely do I say classes in session, but you're about to have a master teacher with Sister Aisha Mustafa will be here tomorrow. You guys know the time, 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. out on the West Coast. I appreciate you. God bless, man, and have an exceptional day. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hey everybody, this is your brother Preacher Moss. Listen, I hope that you enjoyed your Shout Out Show experience. We'll be back with the next show, the next Shout Out Show. A simple ask before you go, please help your brother out. Click that subscribe button, click that notify button, and I'll see you again on this side of the microphone. You probably wonder what that smell is. That's me. I smell good. And the reason I smell good is because I use oils from Peril. So I'm not saying you can't smell good. I'm not even saying you stink. I'm saying you have the opportunity to smell exquisite. Check out TareefAltar.com for some of the best oils and scents in town.